Character creation and customization is something that the majority of players will probably agree they either want more of, or improvements to make better in Final Fantasy XIV's future. And whilst the former of those regarding character customization at that creation level is clearly being worked on behind the scenes for future iterations of the game, as is mentioned by the recent Lodestone post with Yoshi P, where they mention this, it's clear that in the game itself, glamour is something that, whilst many, including myself, are grateful for, could admittedly also do with another pass itself. Dyeing gear then is a way to not only change the intention of a set, be that themed, i.e. a summer theme with bright colours, a cosplay set with specific colours in mind to bring a certain character to life from pop culture in the game, but also to just make a set your own. With a limited number of glamour pieces available to your character, with many of the cooler pieces either being locked to a one-piece set or completely undyeable, or retaining gender locks still, it's safe to say that dyeing what we have is important. When Dawntrail released, and prior to that at FanFest events, they announced the dual dye system, or double dye palette system. This was unveiled, and for all of the fanfare, from myself included, we knew that this was going to come with certain limitations, and it would be fairly strict. Only select items will feature the dual dye system, and it will be expanded on in the future, it was said, and that's pretty awesome. They did say that Dawntrail would be included almost completely across the entire board of gear added. However, anything prior to that would be patches, patch content in the future where they would go back and add the dual dye system to them. And that's perfectly fine. The system itself, not without mentioning how potentially intimidating that UI actually is to first look at, at its very core is a very clever interface and quite good. I, of course, do mention this intimidating UI because I think it's something that a lot of people have had the initial thoughts of when they first saw it. And I think it's something they could probably tidy up and make it a little bit easier on the eye for players, because it is a little bit, seeing all of those buttons to dye a piece of gear just 2 times feels like you've opened Pandora's box and are presented with a 2,000-year-old slide puzzle. But functionality itself, when you do figure out what each button does, is brilliant. We have a button to invert dyes that we select, so that we can see what that red and black dyed chess piece that we've got would look like if instead the red bit was black and the black bit was red, which is great for saving time clicking in sort of each individual dye again. We have buttons to set a favorite set of colors so that when we open the menu we can just apply what we did to that chess piece to the legs with just one button. Like I say, functionally it's amazing. Visually, I'm sure there could be steps to make this a little cleaner. I'm not really sure. I'm not, a UI designer myself, but I did find it intimidating, and a lot of other people are like, what am I looking at? But then that leads us on to the hippo in the pasture, so to speak. How good is the use of dyeing a second palette on a piece of gear? Oh boy, it's very, very hit and miss. Sometimes you can be excited by a brand new piece of gear in a set, go and dye it twice and be happy with the obvious section of fabric being dyed, and then its obviously second largest section of fabric also being dyeable. It's great on some pieces, truly, and it's a great feature. But then we come to other examples that kind of make you wish that they just did another, any other section of that gear piece, any other piece of fabric, anything. The Fat Cat set from a cash shop, there is no reason why the second dye palette option for the item isn't the buttons. We've got these really big, bright buttons, no matter what color you make the chess piece. The obvious other section would either be another piece of fabric or to change these buttons. Instead, the secondary palette only changes 2 beads and a section on the drawstring just at the top at the collar. Another cash shop item you can purchase, the Far Northern set, the Far Northern bottoms, for example. You've got this huge, beautiful pattern at the bottom. You might want to change the color of that. Let's see if you can. Oh, actually, no, it's this tiny little belt buckle right at the top of the actual skirt itself on the side. And let's not get it twisted, it's not just a dual dye system, but some of the newer gear added to the game. So this is the Model C1 Tactical Bottoms, a really cool looking set of gear, right? Really cool looking set of gear. Let's say we wanted to use that because it's got all these lovely zips and buckles and things. Let's try and make that black, right? That should be a really simple thing to do, but it doesn't actually dye the main fabric, even with the single dye black. What it actually dyes is the highlights and this tiny, and I mean astronomically tiny little tag. Another perfectly good example of cash shop gear here as well. Relatively new, the Magitech set that's also dual dye equipped. Of course, you know, you've got your main fabrics there. The thing I would probably want to change the color of the most is this black section in the center, as well as this white overcoat as it's currently dyed. You'll notice that the section that I've dyed with the second color is red, and it's only affected this little tassel in the entire thing. I mean, why? Why is it the tassel that changes color? I know the top of the hood changes color with that, but it's such a small section out of all of this other fabric that I would want to change the color of. And also, I think one of the more egregious examples of this is the adventuring sweater. So the adventuring sweater is something that pretty much everybody has access to in the game. It's a really, really nice sweater. A lot of people like the cozy vibes. What will dye on this? A lot of you would probably expect the base fabric and probably this beautiful shawl, right? Yeah, you're wrong. It's actually, if we change the first dye to something bright and colorful and then the second dye to, I don't know, white or something, you'll see that the shawl obviously is changed, but the sweater gets washed out as a result of it. So instead of them splitting these two pieces of fabric apart, the whole thing is red. You get this washed out undertone, and then the secondary dye is this tiny little bit of fabric here on the clasp like pin. But my point here isn't to have a dig at Square Enix, that's far from the truth. It is just to offer some criticism towards parts that are more frustrating when you come to make a glamour. Like, a lot of the time I'll be trying to make a glamour for something and it'll look nearly perfect, and then I'll just want to change that secondary piece of fabric on that piece of gear that's obvious, and the second dye is enabled, and I go to change the color and it changes just the buttons. It's a little bit frustrating when that happens, especially considering, you know, I don't understand the layer limitations or the technical limitations, design limitations of each piece of gear. It would probably mean if I wanted to get what I wanted, they might have to redesign the way that every single piece of gear works and go back. With that being said, though, I think that all future pieces of glamour and gear that are placed into the game, since it's a, you know, a future-proofing concept, the double dye system will be there for future pieces. I think that every piece should be looked at and QA'd independently, where they go, right, what is the primary piece of fabric, what is the secondary piece of fabric, and make sure the distinction is there between those two main pieces. It's nice to have details change for a more simplistic outfit as the second palette, but when there are like massive undershirts or shawls that cover up, you know, 50-60% of the actual chest piece, it would be nice to change that as well as the base color as well. But that's where I am. There are bigger concerns when it comes to character customization and creation. There are bigger concerns when it comes to glamour, as we've stated earlier with headpieces for Viera and Hrothgar. Equality is something that we should be seeing across all races that play the video game, and yeah, that's where we're at this point. It'll be interesting in a retrospective in like a year or two's time to come back and see what has changed and if my opinion has changed on anything. But for the most part, the dual dye system, I think a lot of the community was slightly disappointed. Not annoyed, just slightly disappointed. And I think myself, I would sit into the category of I love the system, but it could be improved. So there we go. Let me know what you think below. What was your most disappointing aspect of the dual dye system? Do you have any stories yourself of outfits that you wish were gender unlocked, or that you could have access to certain dyes, or whatever it might be? Let me know below and we'll probably do a follow-up in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.